Let's conclude the appendices. Dr. Hanna also quotes a letter from Dr. Simpson, professor in the University of Edinburgh, who also accepts Dr. Stroud's theory. He asserts that so far as we can now understand the physical condition of Jesus, such a sudden termination of his sufferings and death could be produced only by fatal fainting or by a rupture of the walls of the heart or of larger blood vessels issuing from it. But the symptoms, such as the loud cry, show that it was not mortal syncope. He says, on the other hand, these symptoms were such as have been seen in cases of rupture of the walls of the heart. Thus, in the latest book, published in the English language on diseases of the heart, the eminent author, Dr. Walsh, professor of medicine in University College, London, when treating of the symptoms indicating death by rupture of the heart, observes, the hand is suddenly carried to the front of the chest, a piercing shriek uttered, etc., etc. The rapidity of the resulting death is regulated by the size and shape of the ruptured opening, but usually death very speedily ensues in consequence of the blood escaping from the interior of the heart into the cavity of the large surrounding heart sac or pericardium, which sac has, in cases of rupture of the heart, been found on dissection to contain sometimes 2, 3, 4, or more pounds of blood accumulated within it and separated into red clot and lipid serum, or blood and water, as is seen in blood when collected out of the body in a cup or basin in the operation of common bloodletting. Dr. Josiah C. Knott, of this city, a gentleman of well-known high scientific attainments, has favored me with a copy of his post-mortem examination of the Reverend Mr. Maffitt, made with the assistance of Dr. E.P. Gaines in Mobile in 1850. Mr. Maffitt was known all over the United States as a man of no ordinary pulpit ability. He was what is called a revivalist, and spent the last years of his life in great excitement. He got into trouble, was arraigned before the courts of his church in New York, and subsequently went south, where he was preaching with great success, and apparently in high health, when evil reports pursued him, and damaging articles from the New York papers were republished in Mobile. Parties were arrayed for and against him. Of course, both sides should have probably held their breath. He was greatly excited. He was taken suddenly ill about 8:00 p.m. on the 27th of June and died in 7 hours. When the physicians arrived, he found him in great pain, which he referred to the inferior sternal region. He had pain in his heart on several previous occasions. Auscultation detected. No abnormal sound, no palpitation, but the heart beat regularly and slowly. He was perfectly cold all over and bathed in cold sweat. After anodynes and carminatives had been administered, he said, "Doctor, I feel better now everywhere else, but that pain still remains. It is a persistent and abiding pain that seems to press through me against my spine." All this time his pulse was regular, full, strong, but rather slow. His strength was good, for he got up out of bed several times without help. At 1:00, morphine and calomel were administered. At 2:00, the pain had left his breast and gone into his heart, but still retained its severity. There was no palpitation. He complained of being weaker, and his pulse, although regular, seemed slower and weaker. In 15 minutes his heart had stopped beating. The post-mortem showed his lungs sound throughout, pericardium fully distended with fluid, and when opened was found to contain blood and serum. Dr. Knott says, this being carefully removed by a sponge, I introduced my hand into the sac beneath the heart, and on grasping this organ, the contained blood was seen to spurt from a small perforation in the anterior wall of the left ventricle, disclosing at once the immediate cause of his death. Dr. Knott pronounced the death from fatty degeneration, ulceration, and rupture of the heart, confirming Dr. Begbie's general view of such cases in his letter to Dr. Hanna. If Mr. Maffitt's heart had not been diseased, he would probably have survived his grief. Jesus was younger by a quarter of a century, and was apparently sound. Dr. Knott believed that Mr. Maffitt had a malady which marches steadily onward, but adds that it is highly probable that its termination was hastened by moral causes. I cite it as a well-known, authenticated case, the most modern known to me, of rupture of the heart. Now, if they say that Jesus in the Bible seems like he could have been going through some of that, right? Discomfort, extreme anguish, resulting in certain physical symptoms, or combining with certain physical symptoms, the blood, sweat, and stuff like this. So, let's just quickly show the index here. And I, of course, am going to, because I'm in books that are physically old enough, not just reprints, I like to give a good scan so anybody can pause and see everything on the page in its format for itself. Now, the whole reincarnation thing, there's 10 verses in the Bible that people say are arguments for it, but until we get into the Kabbalah and some of the doctrines next to it, I just don't see it necessary for it. And so, and of course, see, the Bible, you can't actually, the Bible's bigger than the Quran, but you can't actually make the argument that the Bible can be used to give guidance on everything, because you really can't. I can, I've looked up subjects that at least, is there a spiritual formula that you can tie to this, other than God created the heavens and the earth, or something just too broad to be generally useful. But see, there's a lot of passages. But can one eventually do this in one's own life? Gather together a whole bunch of passages and figure, okay, this is what I'm going to... okay. The sources, to make clear what some of these sources that have been mentioned. The following books have been consulted, and so far as known, credited for what use has been made of them. The list may be serviceable to those who desire to verify my quotations or to prosecute studies in this department. Now, when I have shown, like my library, that sort of stuff, consider it like a bibliography for my channel, right? Oh, there's hundreds of books that I've poked my finger, that I have looked in, and reading through piles of books that I got from that I borrowed from libraries. And some libraries you have to, or some sections of the library you have to, not take it with you. I have notebooks where I've copied some notes. Sometimes I've just read. I can go, oh, hey, that's a Jewish school. Did they let you use the library if you're not a student? Sometimes they did some. Well, not the part with all the kids, but next to the store and stuff where they had the big old Talmud and stuff. Yeah, So let's figure out what to do there. And the list of illustrations, of course, that's going to be multiple programs.